Okay, food storage. Again, we're talking about the earthquake, the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, and the recommendation is that we have at least 30 days of food storage. And you also want to think about the summer months when you have company. And now suddenly your food storage for you and whoever else lives in your house doesn't go quite as far because now you have company and the company can't leave. So they're going to be with you for a long time. The other thing is if you have grandchildren that come now, their requirements and their food desires are quite different from adults. So that's something else to think about. So you want to establish a 30-day food supply, and then next year you might want to think about adding another 30 days. Because for this very reason, 30 days doesn't go that far. And if you have guests, it's definitely insufficient. And then there's that whole other aspect, which are your neighbors. Have they prepared or have they not prepared? Are they going to be coming knocking on your door, wanting some of your food? And are you in a position to give them some food or not at all? So these are some things to think about. If you rotate through your food and the best by date hasn't gone past yet, you can donate some things to the food bank. So that is something to consider. Also, when it comes to pets, we hope that after 30 days, someone in the I-5 corridor will remember us and maybe drop some food off for us. But no one's going to be dropping off any pet food from the sky. So that's a whole nother problem that we're going to be facing on the Quintana Peninsula. All the pets that are going to be roaming around looking for food because people won't have stored any pet food. So how much food does one person need? It varies, of course. It varies as to, are you male, are you female, how tall are you, how short are you, and how much do you exercise every day. But in general, for most people, it's best to just figure 2,000 calories a day. And then protein is about 50 grams a day, ideally 0.8 grams per kilogram, but we're just talking about a few months here, so 50 grams per person a day should be sufficient. And then don't forget fat. 10 to 15% of caloric intake. It used to be more like 20 to 25% was the recommendation. The recommendation, of course, has gone down over the last few decades with cardiovascular disease, etc. Why is it so important that we must have fat in our diet? Mary?
Our brains.
Our brains. Our brains must have cholesterol. So this is an absolute necessity. So just remember, you will have to store some fat, and fat is very difficult to store. So here's a list in order of priority in descending order as to calories, protein, and fat. So meat has per volume has the most calories, the most protein, and the most fat. Then we go to seafood, eggs, dairy, nuts and seeds, beans and legumes, grains and potatoes. And it's interesting that this order also reflects the cost, right? Meat is the most expensive, seafood the second most expensive usually. And it also goes in order of ability to store. Meat is the most difficult, well, fat is the most difficult to store. Second most difficult to store are meats, and then it goes down from there. So if we're looking at 2,000 calories per person per day, we're looking at 60,000 calories for one person for 1 month. We eat a lot. So how do you know how many calories you have stored right now in your house? Well, thanks to food labeling, it's actually not that complicated. You check the label and you see how many calories per serving, and then how many servings are in the container or in the can. And then you just multiply the servings times the calories, and it'll tell you how many calories are in a package or in a container. So this goes without saying, frozen and refrigerated food will spoil in less than 7 days without ongoing refrigeration or freezing. Canned food, dehydrated food, or freeze-dried food is the easiest to store. We are going to need some water for most of this to be able to consume these foods. And if you have the ability to cook, that will greatly reduce the cost of storing food, because you won't have to store ready meals, which are very expensive. And we'll go through some of the cooking options. This is really important. Store what you would actually like to eat. Test a small amount prior to placing a large order. You can see some of the display here. You have a little can. If you're thinking about ordering some of these dehydrated or freeze-dried foods, just order a few different little things and try them and see if you'll actually like them. You have to be really careful with servings. So I have several friends, and they said, yeah, don't bother me with all this emergency prep stuff. I bought a bucket at Walmart, and I bought a bucket at Costco, and I'm put it in the back room and I'm all set. Well, you really need to look at that bucket, and you need to look at how many servings, how many calories per serving, how much is in that bucket. Because oftentimes they just say 200 calories or 250 calories per ready meal or per package. And if we're looking at 2,000 calories a day, you're looking at about 700 calories, 3 meals a day. So you're looking at possibly 3 packages for 1 meal. And so I think those ready meal bucket things are quite misleading. The other problem is they cost a lot of money and they have a lot of salt in them. So the handout lists other options for you. You're all used to use by and best by dates. Most food products have a best by date. Use by is not as common. Use by is more for fresh things like fresh meat or fresh seafood that's been packaged within the last 24 hours or so. And the use by date is a very tight window. So those are not things that you're going to be using for food storage. Best By guarantees it until that date, and often the product lasts quite a bit longer than that. Moisture and oxygen are the enemy of stored food. And that's why you see a lot of oxygen absorbers in certain food products and bags that you buy. And I'll be talking about Mylar bags soon. Mylar bags, we'll get into that. Those are really good for granola, flour, rice, cereal. You can put an oxygen bag in it, seal it, and you've all eaten products that were stored or packaged in Mylar bags. Here is a photo of Mylar bags. I have some on display here on the table. Aluminum on the inside, plastic on the outside. And you can see the little oxygen absorbers here. And you throw one of those 2 in there, and you can buy Mylar bags yourself. I like to, every September, I buy a whole bunch of cereal that I like that has a high protein content, and then I take it out of the cardboard box and put it in Mylar bags, take my iron and throw in an oxygen absorber, take the iron and seal it. And then when I open it a year later, it's just as if I had bought it yesterday.
Susie?
Yeah.
Are the oxygen absorbers the same thing as the desiccant packets that we get?
No, the
The tanks?
desiccant take the moisture out.
Okay,
Yeah.
should have known that.
No, but it's interesting you should ask that because most people just throw in an oxygen absorber into the Mylar bag. They don't put desiccants in there. Desiccants are more found, I think, in bottles with tablets and medication.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just saw the little packet and went, oh, I know what that is, but no.
I'll have to do a little more research on that. So we have cans. They all have a best by date on them. How long does the food last in a can? Does it last past the best by date? Yes. So cans, there is absolutely nothing wrong with eating canned food. What happens is the food, let's say it's vegetables, they're harvested that morning, put on the truck, brought to the processing company. It's processed in less than 24 hours. And the food, once the can is sealed, then it's cooked, then it's heated. So now it's sealed, now you've cooked it, now you've killed whatever microorganism was in there. So it's super safe. And they have found, they've done studies where they have gone to people's homes and taken stuff out of their refrigerator. And then they have measured the nutrient values, how many vitamins are in there, for instance. And the canned food, because it's processed so fast, we don't spend any money anymore in modern society storing things. Because it was processed all within 24 hours, the nutrient value of canned food is actually higher than what's in your refrigerator. And the food generally does not go bad in the can. What happens if you're many years past the best by date, it just doesn't taste so good anymore. But generally speaking, it's not dangerous. Now, if it's 20 years past the best by date, it's probably time to throw it out. Dehydrated food in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber can last a really long time, oftentimes more than 10 years. Freeze-dried food is the cat's meow. It lasts the longest, generally more than 20 years. And it, of course, is the most expensive because it lasts the longest and it's the best packaged food. And as I mentioned, fat is the most difficult to store with the shortest shelf life. And this also impacts meat storage. That's why freeze-dried meat is really expensive and it doesn't last as long as other freeze-dried foods. So canned food, meat, fish, beans. You can, if there's certain things that you like, certain canned food products, you buy a whole bunch of them and then you rotate through them. And as you consume it, you fill your shelf, you replenish in the back so that the newest stuff goes in the back and you eat what's the oldest stuff. And as long as you donate cans to the food bank a week or two before best by date, they will accept it. If it's past the best by date, they will not accept it. So you can also view some of this food storage as a donation. If there's certain canned foods you like, but you just didn't get through it, donate it. It'll go to a good use. And consider it a donation. Dehydrated food. These, you'll see a bunch of number 10 cans. So these are, the food in there is not in a Mylar bag. It's just in a sealed can with oxygen absorber in there. And that can last many years. These particular potato slices are guaranteed to last 15 to 20 years. And they're not freeze-dried, they're just dehydrated. Freeze-dried food also, you can either have these super pail buckets, these big buckets that you can see here on the table, or in a number 10 can. Now, if you're buying stuff in bulk, like these 6-grain oats or this ABC soup, then it's in a large Mylar bag inside the plastic bucket, and the Mylar bag is sealed with oxygen absorbers. And that's how it's preserved. Pasta, I think, is really underrated. Pasta has a lot of calories. So 1 pound of pasta has 1,600 calories, 55 grams of protein. It's pretty good. And it stores, it has a best by date on it, but it stores many, many years after that. I don't know that pasta really ever goes bad if you store it in a cool, dry place, even without changing the packaging. If you are gluten-free, then the gluten is where the protein is. And so gluten-free, that's a whole nother topic, but there are products like this company, Rainy Day Foods. They make a whole variety of gluten-free products. So olive oil, we go through a lot of olive oil in my household, and it's a great source of fat. And so let's say you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on food storage, and you don't want to have a whole bunch of canned meats and freeze-dried meats. And you're going to say to yourself, I can make it work for a month or 2 or 3 without a whole bunch of meat. Then just have a whole bunch of extra olive oil on hand. And olive oil lasts for a couple of years. Again, it cannot be exposed to UV light. So you either have to have your glass bottle in the cabinetry away from daylight or downstairs in the basement somewhere, or you buy it in a can. Canned olive oil lasts longer than olive oil in glass. 2 tablespoons per person per day will meet your fat requirement after the emergency. That comes out to 1 liter per person per month. So 1 bottle per person per month of olive oil. So I have 3 months of olive oil stored up. So I have 6, I'm always ahead 6 bottles. There are 2 of us. I'm always ahead 6 bottles of olive oil in my household. Our food co-op allows for bulk orders every September at cost. So I've gotten in the habit, there are certain things, certain canned foods, shampoos, lotion, certain things that we buy in bulk once a year in September. And that's also a good time for you to review your pantry and what's in it. I just do it once a year. I don't check it more than that. Multivitamins, your diet will be different after the emergency. Fresh produce will be very limited if available at all. So having a bottle of multivitamins around, and you don't need to take one every day, but you might want to take one every other day or so until our food supply chain is back in order. Don't worry about this list. This list is on your handout. It just gives some examples of how long things last. And at the very bottom of that slide, you can see dark chocolate, 2 to 5 years. It's very important. It's really mandatory that you have at least a dozen chocolate bars in your food storage. So dark chocolate doesn't use any dairy, whereas milk chocolate does. So this is also very important. You must have dark chocolate. Infants, we talked about that early on. Our community here is older, but we do have children and grandchildren that come to visit. And so it's a good idea, as soon as they have arrived, to head to the store with the infant's parent and just buy a whole bunch of infant food. And for, even though they're planning only to stay for a week, just buy a whole bunch for a whole month. And then when they leave and the earthquake didn't happen, You bring all of that stuff to the food bank and donate it to them. And they'll put it to good use. But infants cannot survive on adult food. So this is similar to pet food. You'll have to make special accommodations for that. Here is pet food. I'm always ahead. My dog eats one of these big bags every month. And I'm always ahead 3 months with dry pet food. A lot of people nowadays feed their pets refrigerated or frozen food and have gotten off of dry food completely. And so that's going to be a huge problem. Because your refrigerated and frozen food, if you happen to have a month's worth, which oftentimes is not the case, but even if you did, it's going to spoil. So I strongly recommend feeding, figuring out what kind of dry food do you think would be good for your dog. And then giving your dog some dry food every day so that they're used to the dry food. So that if they had to only eat dry food, they wouldn't be like completely in shock and put off, and they would actually eat some of that. Medications, same with just like pet food, you need at least 90 days. The pharmacies, who only knows how long it's going to take for the pharmacies to reopen or for you to be able to get mail delivery for your medications. Tablets do not go bad. Liquid medication like eye drops do lose their potency a little bit over a period of several years. It's really not that significant. So the providers here on the Olympic Peninsula have been educated on the fact that we have this earthquake risk and that they need to help their patients have an extra 90 days of medication on hand. So they will write you an extra script. The insurance company will not pay for it. So you will have to pay cash for an extra 90 days. And then you just put it in rotation. Then when your regular prescription is due to be renewed, you just put that in the back. And so you're always 90 days ahead. What about hunting, fishing, foraging, growing your own food? Those are very problematic things. There are all kinds of complications with hunting. The oceans will be polluted with gasoline and oil. A lot of the fish will be dead or gone. Foraging, very difficult to get enough calories. While you're foraging, you're expending calories. Growing your own food is definitely a good idea. But again, this is just going to make life a little better if you have a little something fresh, but it will in no way be able to feed you calorie wise. And I have a separate handout if anyone is interested in pursuing any of that. I have a separate handout on this table just so you kind of go through the questions that you need to ask yourself if you wanted to pursue any of these options. How will you cook the food? Camp stove, wood stove, propane barbecue. So here's a camp stove and we have it set up over there. 2-burner with one of those 20-pound propane cylinders. Works really well. You just need to have a special adapter. The little cylinders are not going to go for very long, but the 20-pound cylinder, that will carry you for a couple of weeks. And you might want to have 2 of those. These are called rocket stoves, and we have one over there on display. There are literally dozens and dozens of designs for rocket stoves. They're considered portable wood stoves. Campers use them. And it's really ingenious. I mean, I bought that guy a couple of years ago and fired it up, and it was super hot in no time. I actually had to buy another pot to fit that pot, to put a little water in it and fit that pot over the other pot so that the water would heat it so that the food wouldn't burn, but it's highly effective. And that type of fuel is always available. And if you just go online and you type in rocket stove, you'll be amazed what the options are. This one cost, I think, around $120 or $150, I don't remember.
Says 150.
150, okay. So you say to yourself, well, but I have propane, I have a propane stovetop, I'm good to go. So the problem with propane stovetops is that you don't know what's happened to the piping that leads up to the propane stove. So first of all, I posted a little poster there as you exit. I'm giving a propane safety talk on May 9th. And if you have a propane tank or propane cylinders, I strongly recommend that you come. It's much briefer than this presentation. But we have all these above ground propane tanks and they need to be anchored because they're going to rip apart from their connections during the earthquake. And so you want to replace the rigid piping with flexible piping. Nevertheless, you still, even if everything is intact, even if you've anchored your tank and you have flexible piping, you still don't know what's happened to the piping inside your house. And without a leak test, it's too dangerous for you to use your propane stovetop. So, and I go into more detail on this in the propane talk, but you can install a separate connection on the outside to your propane tank that will go to your generator or possibly your barbecue. And so that you can make use of some of the propane in that big tank. But you really, won't be able to cook inside on top of your propane stove. Here's an example where the line has been split. The one pipe on the right-hand side goes inside the house. The one on the left goes around the outside wall. And down there where the arrow is, and that's where you can hook your generator in. So now it's safe because you can see the piping, everything's intact. Now you can hook up your generator. And there's certain barbecue, some of the more modern barbecues you might be able to hook up as well. It has to do with high pressure and low pressure flow. Ron Bishop is our East Jefferson, probably the best known East Jefferson County propane service and consultant person. And he can come and take a look at your system and make recommendations and attach the T and other pipes if you so desire. Okay, so we have water, we have food, and we have a way to cook. And so now we can eat. Now, what do we do? So that's where we have pee and poo buckets. So these are, you can see them on display. You can buy them at Home Depot, any hardware store. You might have some left over from painting something. And you can buy these clever little seats and lids for them. I bought them a couple of years ago. They were about $15 each. And it's perfectly comfortable to sit on there. So you don't, the problem with the aroma and the odors is that we mix the pee and the poo. So if you don't mix the pee and the poo, it's actually much less of a problem. And then when you sprinkle a little carbon material or sawdust or some old dried up leaves or even newspaper onto the poo, it does its thing and decomposes, and that works quite well. So this is one of the things that is incorrect on the Think Plan Do handout. It says that you can dump your human waste into your septic tank, and that is incorrect. You can do that for definitely for a week and possibly 2 weeks without adding any water, since we'll not have any running water. If you have rainwater, why then okay. But you have to take into consideration your septic pump. Is your leach field gravity drained? Do you have a pump? A lot of us here, because we're on this hillside, we have a septic pump. We won't have electricity for the pump. And I've talked to 3 different septic people, and they say that maybe up to 2 weeks you can put stuff in there, but then you really need to stop. Because then once the crisis is over, your septic system will have failed. So what do? I'm waiting to hear back from the director of our Department of Emergency Management, but in the meantime, having talked to those septic people, the best solution that we can come up with for now is that you dig a hole 1 to 2 feet deep in your backyard somewhere. If you have a well, which we don't, shouldn't be an issue. If you had a well, you want to be sure that you go far away from that, but well, you have a well, Tim, so you want to dig a hole somewhere else. And then you just, you can, the urine you can just cast on your lawn. That's not a big deal. The poo, you put in the hole, you sprinkle your sawdust on there. And then over time, hopefully things will get back to normal. The other option that the county said was to put everything in the black plastic bag, leave it in your garage. I'm not doing that. I don't know about anybody else. So I'm gonna be digging my hole.